What's your view on the federal government proposal for 3 hours of free electricity to bring the off-peak demand higher, reduce the shoulder peak and the peak demand, and also providing, in a way, access to the rooftop solar, those who do not have rooftop solar energy, right? By giving free energy. So what's your view on
Yeah,
this?
look, I think it is extraordinarily bad policy that has not been thought through. So, what's the political and kind of policy motivation for all of this? It's the idea that those households that don't have rooftop solar or can't have rooftop solar need to benefit from it in electricity prices they pay. That's kind of that'll have been the idea that circulated amongst the minister's advisors.
That's how it was labeled. Yes, yes.
Yeah, in the countless discussions, and someone will have said, well, how about we simply mandate free electricity in the middle of the price? Look at the wholesale prices. They're so often negative. Oh, isn't that fantastic? And they announced it. No policy economic analysis that was published before, no serious discussion of the ideas. They simply announced. I think it's terrible policy for the following reasons. You can get these offers in the market in Australia. I've been on them for more than 2 years since they were introduced. And in fact, yesterday I switched from a retailer, my old retailer, which had 3 hours of free power, to a new offer in the market offering 4 hours of free power. And because I've got an EV, that additional hour of flexibility rather suits me. And so I've now switched. The process took me 60 seconds online. So the retail market, switching costs, anyone tells you they're high in Australia, sorry, the lived experience that I've had, and I'm hardly knowledgeable on the ins and outs of that, is it's not. That's an offer freely made. My energy retailer had no policy induction to make that offer. They don't own much generation. They retailers operating in the market, and they've made that freely. The government's policy will mandate that all retailers make this offer. In addition, in the default offer the government sets, they'll be under pressure from social groups not to allow retailers to get back the foregone income they'll have got, not just on their energy purchase, which will be non-zero in many hours, but also on their retailing and network charges, for which they're not getting paid in those free hours by substantially higher off-peak prices. So they'll be under pressure to effectively introduce a tariff that involves substantial sales, or at least offer at sales at prices that are not going to recover their costs as an average. That sounds fantastic, doesn't it? We all like our energy retailers to make a loss when they sell electricity, except that they will withdraw supply. They'll have to obtain income from other customers if they are to stay in business. Some of those energy retailers will leave the market simply because they can't compete, being forced to sell for nothing. It will undermine rivalry within the retail market. It decreases the attractiveness of that market to new suppliers and to innovation. And who will benefit from this? It'll be relatively affluent customers like me who have the flexibility to move their demand around, who have EVs, and who effectively get a middle-class welfare price of electricity through policy. The vast bulk of the people who don't have access to rooftop solar live in higher density buildings, which have a low ratio of roof space to floor space because they multi-occupancy places, and either they are rented, or even if they own, the complexity of getting a shared solar resource on a roof to the individual dwellings in the building is just hard. And so for these physical structural reasons, the solar uptake in that sector will be low. Most of the people living in those sorts of apartments do not work from home. They work in service occupations or in physical labor occupations where they need to leave their home. They are, other than on the weekends, not going to be able to benefit from this scheme. So, effectively through this nice sounding policy, it's always like this, government is going to entrench a subsidy for the rich at the expense of the poor. And I think will greatly undermine distributed rooftop solar uptake. Why install solar panels if you can buy electricity from the grid when those solar panels are going to be producing for much of their time, if you can pay nothing to buy that electricity from the grid? Storage is great, which is solar. And Australia's still got a long way to go in getting its coal out of the system. And Solar is the cheapest way of doing that. So you are undermining the source of production that has the lowest social impact and the lowest cost as part of your energy transition. So if government wants that, it's going to have to now impose even higher subsidies on that technology to compensate for the economics, which it has damaged through a mandatory free electricity policy. So those are my arguments.
Good, good. I mean, I want to actually gather a few people and have a debate on this topic. So you definitely sort of give a very strong argument. And it's a very interesting policy because this is another off-peak tariff with a zero price. Suddenly it got an attention and it's gone globally. And exactly as you mentioned, the people who are in an apartment dwelling and working on service jobs, they're not necessarily charging their EVs during the middle of the day. No one is at home. So they won't be able to benefit